I used to think distance in a relationship came with a blow-up, some huge betrayal, a screaming match, something you could point to and say, that's when it all changed. But for me and Lorena, it didn't happen like that. It was quiet, gradual, almost unnoticeable until the silence was louder than anything we used to say. It started with hugs, or the absence of them. You might think that's a small thing, a hug. But when you live with someone, share a bed, plan your future together, that little act becomes a lifeline. It's not about passion or routine. It's about closeness, about being chosen again and again, every day, even in the smallest ways. And for a long time, Lorena chose me. When we first got married, she was warm, affectionate. She'd hug me when I got home from work, hold on me longer than needed, just because it made her feel safe. I remember those moments like they were yesterday, her arms around my neck, her head resting on my chest. That was home for me. Not the house, not the furniture, just her holding me like I mattered. But over time, she let go. Not just physically, emotionally too. At first, I thought it was stress. Her work got more intense. She'd come home tired, drained, distracted. I gave her space. Tried to be patient. I took on more chores around the house, cooked more often, even started leaving her little notes on the bathroom mirror. Stupid things like, you've got this, or I love you even on your worst days. She used to smile when she saw those notes. But eventually, she just started pulling them down without a word. I still remember the first time I reached for her after work, just instinct, muscle memory, and she flinched. Not in fear, just irritation. Like my touch had become a bother. I stepped back, laughed it off, told myself it was just a long day. But it didn't stop. A few days later, I leaned in to kiss her cheek while she washed dishes. She turned her head and said, "Can you not do that right now?" No anger, no discussion, just that. It hit me harder than I expected. I stood there for a second, unsure what to say. Eventually, I just nodded and went to the living room. I didn't even turn on the TV. I just sat there in silence, holding on to something I couldn't name at the time. Looking back, I think that was the beginning of me grieving a relationship that hadn't ended, just shifted into something unrecognizable. And the thing is, I tried. God knows I tried. I asked her gently what was wrong. Nothing, she'd say, eyes fixed on her phone. I asked if she still felt close to me. She'd shrug. You're overthinking things. I offered to go to therapy together. She rolled her eyes. So now I'm the problem? No matter what approach I used, soft, direct, silent, I got nowhere. She stopped hugging me completely after a while. I'd come home, and she wouldn't even look up. Just a flat hey, like I was a neighbor stopping by to borrow something. There was one night, a random Wednesday, where I sat on our bed and just watched her scroll through her phone while I spoke to her. I was telling her about something I saw in traffic that reminded me of our trip to Rio. And halfway through my sentence, she got up and walked to the bathroom. Didn't say a word. Didn't even pretend to care. I sat there for a few minutes, then looked around the room, our room, and it felt like a museum. Pictures of us on the wall, memories frozen in time, a mattress we used to make love on now, reduced to a cold slab we slept on back to back. I'm not dramatic by nature. I don't jump to conclusions. I believe in working things out. But that night, I felt a shift, like I was starting to detach, piece by piece. See, it's not the absence of sex that breaks a man. It's the absence of closeness. It's when the woman you married starts treating you like a roommate. When she talks to her friends with more laughter in 5 minutes than she gives you in 5 days. When you begin to feel like a burden for simply wanting to be held. I remember lying awake one night, staring at the ceiling, asking myself, what did I do wrong? And the truth? I still don't know. Because I never cheated, never raised my voice, never made her feel unsafe or unwanted. I showed up, I loved her, fully, even when she stopped giving me anything to hold on to. And yet, I was the one feeling invisible. I started avoiding home more. Not because I didn't love her, but because being around her was lonelier than being alone. I'd stay late at work, go to the gym twice a day, take drives with no destination. She never asked where I was, never called to check in, never even looked at me like she missed me. And over time, I stopped hoping she would. I realized I was doing all the work, not just in chores or finances, but in emotional weight. I was the only one trying, and trying alone eventually turns into surviving. By the end of that year, I was emotionally numb. I still slept next to her, but I wasn't beside her anymore. Not really. We were two people living parallel lives under the same roof. And every time I passed her in the hallway without a touch, every time I came home to silence, every night I rolled over and stared at the dark while she turned her back to me, something in me died a little more. Until I reached the point I never thought I would. I stopped feeling guilty for thinking about leaving. Not out of revenge. Not even out of sadness anymore. Just out of self-respect. Because I realized the version of me that once felt loved in this marriage, he didn't exist anymore. And I couldn't keep pretending that the empty space between us was just a phase. It was our new reality. And I wasn't going to live like that anymore. You ever notice how people don't truly react until they lose their grip on control? That's what happened with Lorena. After months of feeling like a shadow in my own marriage, months of getting nothing but cold glances and stiff silence, I made a decision. Not a dramatic one. Not something fueled by rage. I wasn't storming out, smashing things, or yelling across the room. That's not me. That was never me. I just woke up one morning and realized I was done trying. You can only offer your love so many times before the silence becomes your answer. So I waited. Waited for the right moment. A calm moment. A moment where I wouldn't let emotions turn it into a war zone. And that moment came on a quiet Saturday afternoon. She was sitting at the kitchen table, sipping coffee, scrolling through her phone like always. Wearing one of those oversized shirts I used to find sexy before everything between us went cold. The dog, our little beagle Max, sat curled by her feet. The house was peaceful. Too peaceful. I stood near the sink, dish towel in my hand, and I said it softly. So softly that at first, I don't think she even heard me. Lorena, I began, I think we should get a divorce. She didn't move at first. Just sat there, still staring at her screen like she was pretending not to hear. Or maybe she was stunned. Maybe that word, divorce, didn't register right away coming out of my mouth. So I said it again, firmer this time. I don't want to keep living like this. I think it's time we end this. Her head slowly lifted, and when our eyes met, I saw something I hadn't seen in a long time, fear. Not irritation, not boredom, not detachment, but fear. What are you talking about? She said, her voice breaking slightly, as if the words hurt her throat. I didn't answer right away. I wanted to give her space to sit with it. I needed her to feel the weight of the moment. The finality. We don't talk, I said. You don't touch me. I feel more alone beside you than I ever felt on my own. That's not marriage, Lorena. That's a prison. Tears welled up in her eyes instantly. Real ones. No fake theatrics. No calculated delay. They came out like a wave crashing against a wall that had been holding back for too long. She dropped her phone onto the table like it burned her hand and whispered, "You're serious?" I nodded. Yes. And that's when it happened. She stood up so fast, the chair scraped loudly across the tile floor. Her face turned pale. She staggered back a step, then fell to her knees, right there on the kitchen floor. I just stood there, frozen, because I never expected that. The same woman who hadn't hugged me in almost a year, the woman who rolled her eyes when I reached for her, who shrugged me off like a mild inconvenience, was now on the floor, sobbing like a child who just got lost in a crowd. She covered her face with both hands and let out a sound I'll never forget. Not a scream, not a cry, something in between. A sound soaked in regret, in panic, in realization. "Please, Renato," she said, voice shaking. "Don't do this. Please." I didn't know it got this bad. I wanted to say, "How could you not know?" But I didn't. I just stood there. She crawled toward me on her knees, literally crawled, and wrapped her arms around my waist like she was trying to anchor herself to something slipping away. It was surreal. "I'll do better," she said. "We can go to therapy. We can fix this. Please just don't give up on me. On us." And maybe in another life, I would have dropped everything and held her right there on the floor. Maybe I would have cried too and whispered, "Okay, let's try again." But not this time, because I knew what she was feeling wasn't love. It was loss of control. Lorena hadn't realized what she had, because she assumed I'd always be there. No matter how cold she became, how emotionally distant, how closed off. She believed I'd keep showing up, keep paying the bills, keep being the dependable, loyal man who never complains. She never imagined I'd stop choosing her. And now that I had, she panicked. I gently stepped back, breaking her grip. She looked up at me with wide, terrified eyes, like I just pulled the ground out from beneath her. "I begged you for months," I said. "I asked what was wrong. I tried to reach you. You pushed me away again and again. You don't get to act surprised now." She shook her head frantically. "I didn't think you'd actually leave. I thought you were just frustrated. I didn't know it was this serious. That hit me harder than anything else. I didn't think you'd actually leave." Imagine loving someone so much, staying loyal, showing up, trying again and again, and all the while, they think you're not capable of walking away. Because your love was so solid, so consistent, they confused it for weakness. That's when I knew it was too late. She had mistaken my patience for permanence. And now that she realized I could leave, that I would leave, she fell apart. But it wasn't real love driving her reaction. It was fear of having to face herself. Alone. She cried for hours that day, followed me around the apartment, asked if we could talk, asked if we could start over. But something in me had already left. My bags weren't packed yet, but emotionally, I was gone. I didn't yell. I didn't insult her. I just said, "You should have cared when I did." And that shut everything down. She knew I meant it. That night, I slept on the couch. She didn't say a word. The crying stopped, but the silence was heavier than ever. This time because she felt it too. And I think that was the first night Lorena realized I wasn't bluffing. She thought I'd always be waiting. She thought I'd been like always. But I was finally done twisting myself into something unrecognizable just to keep someone who wouldn't read for me anymore. I used to think the hardest part of leaving would be the loneliness. But it turns out the hardest part was already behind me, and I had lived it for years inside the very marriage I walked away from. The day after I asked Lorena for a divorce, the house was a mess. Not physically, but emotionally. She barely spoke, and when she did, her words were soaked in panic. Every time I crossed the room, I could feel her eyes on me, as if she was silently begging me to stop and look at her. But I didn't. Not out of cruelty, but because I had nothing left to offer her. Her tears didn't move me. Her voice, pleading, shaking, didn't change my mind. Because I'd already been through my grieving process. Months of silent rejection, nights where I lay beside her wondering if I mattered anymore, mornings where I got up and made coffee for someone who wouldn't even say good morning back. That's when I grieved. That's when I cried, quietly in the shower in the car where no one could see. So by the time she hit her knees, I had nothing left to mourn. It was done. A couple days after our talk, I started moving my things. No screaming matches, no dramatic ultimatums, just packing boxes, folding clothes, sorting documents. She hovered nearby, trying to stay composed, but every few hours, the panic would hit her again. "You're really going through with this?" I'd nod. "After everything we built, you're just going to walk away?" I didn't answer, because it wasn't just. It was years of slow abandonment. Emotional, physical, spiritual. She didn't leave all at once. She left in pieces. She left every time she turned away from me. Every time she let days pass without touching me. Every time I reached out and she recoiled like I was something inconvenient. I wasn't walking away from something beautiful. I was walking away from the ghost of something we used to be. She started trying in those last few days. Making breakfast. Sitting next to me. Asking if I needed help folding. But it wasn't love. It was desperation. And desperation comes too late when effort should have come first. I moved into a small apartment across town. Just a one-bedroom. Simple, clean, quiet. No framed photos on the walls. No leftover memories bleeding through the furniture. Just peace. The first night alone, I expected to feel regret. But I didn't. I sat on the couch with a glass of wine, watching the city through the window, and for the first time in a long time, I didn't feel like I had to explain myself. I didn't feel like I was failing someone. I wasn't being blamed for being too emotional or too needy. I was just me. That silence, it healed me. A week passed, then another. Then the messages started. Not long essays, just short, scattered phrases. "I miss you. Can we talk? I'm sorry. Then came the voice notes. She started talking about memories. Our first trip to Parody. The night I cooked her favorite pasta after her job interview. The day I held her when she lost her grandmother. And every time I listened, I felt nothing. Because you can't revive something you neglected for years by mourning it for 5 minutes. She started posting online. Old couple photos. Sad quotes. Friends began messaging me, asking if we were okay. I didn't respond to them either. Because this part was about me. Lorena had every opportunity to fix things when it mattered. I had asked. I had begged. I had been patient, kind, loyal. And she met all of that with silence and distance. So now I met her sadness with silence of my own. Not because I wanted to hurt her, but because I had finally learned to protect myself. About a month after I left, she showed up outside my building. I was coming home from the gym, towel around my neck, earphones still in. When I looked up and saw her, standing by the gate, I froze. She looked tired, not just physically. She looked like someone who hadn't slept in days, someone who had run out of things to control and was now standing face to face with consequences. I just want to talk, she said. I nodded. We are talking. I want to fix this, she continued. I'm ready now. I see everything. I know I push you away. I was cold. I was selfish. But I don't want to lose you, Renato. I can change. I sighed, the kind of sigh that carries years in it. Why now? I asked. Why only after I left? Tears rushed into her eyes again. Because I didn't think you would. I didn't think you'd really leave. You've always stayed. And there it was. The truth. She didn't cry for the man she loved. She cried because she finally realized I wasn't hers anymore. Exactly, I said. I always stayed. And you thought that meant I always would. But I'm not here to convince someone to love me anymore. I'm not here to ask to be touched, or seen, or heard. I deserve more. And I had to walk away to remember that. She reached for my hand. I stepped back. I wish you peace, Lorena. I hope you heal. But I'm done. And I meant it. She could cry all she wanted. She could kneel, scream, promise. But none of it could undo the months, the years she let me go unheard. Unfelt, unseen. It's not the tears that come when someone leaves that matter. It's the warmth that should have come while they were still choosing to stay. Now, I choose myself, and I'm not coming back. You know, I used to believe that when two people love each other, they just naturally meet in the middle. You give, you take. You support, you're supported. And yeah, sometimes one gives more than the other, but it balances out because there's respect. There's reciprocity. That's what I thought marriage was supposed to be. And for a while it was. Camila and I were together for 6 years, married for 4. I met her during a conference in Sao Paulo. I was giving a talk on real estate investing, and she worked in digital marketing for a beauty brand. Confident, sharp, knew how to hold a room without raising her voice. I liked that about her. She wasn't clingy. She had her own thing going on. We clicked fast. In the beginning, everything felt easy. We were building something together. We had dreams, plans. I handled the finances, and she was totally fine with that. Actually, she seemed relieved. She'd tell her friends, Eduardo's the kind of man who takes care of everything. I don't have to worry about anything. And that was true. I paid the mortgage, covered her car note, took her on trips twice a year. Whenever her parents needed help, I never hesitated. Whether it was dinner out, subscriptions, shopping, new tech, whatever she wanted, I handled it. I didn't throw it in her face. I wasn't the type to say, look how much I do for you. I did it because I wanted to. I did it because I thought we were a team. But over time, something in her changed. It didn't happen all at once. It was subtle, like a temperature drop you don't notice until you're shivering. She became distant, emotionally and physically. Conversations turned transactional. Intimacy went from being a shared moment to a scheduled task, one she kept canceling. I'd reach for her in bed, and she'd roll over. I'd try to kiss her neck while she cooked, and she'd flinch, saying she was tired or stressed, or not in the mood for that right now. I get it. Life gets heavy sometimes. We're not always in a mood. But this wasn't a day or a week. It was months. So I brought it up. I remember it clearly. We were in the living room. I had just finished cleaning the kitchen after dinner. I sat down beside her, and gently said, "Camila, we haven't really been close in a while. Is everything okay between us?" She didn't even look up from her phone. Intimacy only when I want, Eduardo. I don't exist to satisfy you. I blinked, just sat there stunned. It wasn't the words that cut, it was the tone. Cold, flat, as if I had just asked something offensive. As if wanting to connect with my wife made me some sort of entitled creep. "I wasn't demanding anything," I said quietly. "I just want us to feel like partners again." She stood up and walked off like the conversation was over. No dialogue, no willingness to unpack it. Just that sharp line, "only when I want." That was the moment something shifted inside me. You know when you reach your limit, not with anger, but with clarity? That was it. Here's the woman I've been providing everything for. A roof over her head, comfort, safety, options. She doesn't work anymore. Said she wanted to reset and focus on herself. I didn't argue. I supported it. Fully. But now that same woman tells me connection, even basic affection, is hers to give or withhold like a prize. And what do I get in return? Silence. Indifference. Occasionally, sarcasm. But the expenses? Oh, those were flowing just fine. Hair appointments. Designer bags. Monthly deliveries from boutique stores. Spa days. Brunches with her friends at overpriced restaurants. She had no problem spending. But when it came to emotional or physical presence, suddenly everything had a lock on it. I started noticing how transactional our relationship had become. She'd be sweet for a day or two when she wanted something. A new phone, a girl's weekend, upgrades to the kitchen appliances. And then the frost would return. I wasn't her partner anymore. I was her provider, her sponsor, her bank. And don't get me wrong, I'm not the type to say, if I pay, I'm owed intimacy. That's not how I think. But relationships are built on connection, on effort, on mutual care. And I was getting none of that. So I stopped talking about it. I stopped trying to initiate anything. I went quiet, and I paid attention. Every time she bought something new, every time she posted stories in cafes or spas or yoga retreats, every time she casually dropped a request in a conversation like I was her employee, I filed it all away. That's when I started planning. Not to retaliate, but to reclaim my dignity. I wasn't going to argue. I wasn't going to beg. I wasn't going to yell or guilt trip her. I was going to do exactly what she did, exercise my autonomy. If intimacy only happens when she wants, then financial support would happen when I want. No fight, no announcement, just action. I scheduled a meeting with my bank, separated my accounts, revoked her access to my credit cards, left the essentials, rent, utilities, basics covered. I'm not heartless, but the perks, the bonuses, all paused. I didn't tell her right away. I waited for her to feel the absence the way I had been feeling it for months. She noticed 2 days later. We were getting ready for bed, and she held up her phone. "Why is the joint card declining?" I looked up from my book. Calm, cool. Maybe it's because intimacy only happens when you feel like it. Figured we could apply that logic to everything now. She blinked, caught completely off guard. What's that supposed to mean? It means I'm done providing everything while receiving nothing. Her mouth opened, closed, opened again. I'm your wife. Exactly. And I was your husband. A partner, not an ATM. That's when it began to dawn on her. I wasn't bluffing. I had stopped begging for affection. Now, I was letting the silence speak for itself. And it was only the beginning. You know, most men don't just shut down one day out of nowhere. We adapt in silence for longer than we should. And when we finally stop showing up, it's not because we're cold. It's because we've been running on empty and nobody noticed. That's where I was with Bianca. After months of being treated like I was on standby, emotionally, physically, even conversationally, I stopped expecting connection. I stopped hoping. And the night she stood there, arms crossed, looked me in the eye and said, "Intimacy only when I want," something clicked inside me. Not a spite, not even disappointment anymore. It was something colder, detachment. I nodded, didn't argue, didn't yell. I just said, okay. That was all. And I meant it. From that moment forward, I decided if affection was going to be conditional, then support would be too. I wasn't trying to be cruel. I was just tired of being the only one maintaining the engine of a relationship she kept parking in the garage. Bianca had grown used to a very comfortable life. And I get it, I helped create that. I've always believed that if you can provide, you should. But what nobody tells you is that the moment you become the sole provider, some people stop contributing anything else. And they call it balance. She had full access to our shared credit card. It covered everything from groceries to her high-end skincare orders, spontaneous Amazon purchases, and her luxury Pilates studio that cost more than some people's rent. I never questioned it until she began acting like our relationship was a subscription service where I paid, and she delivered whatever energy she felt like. Maybe. So I made a plan. Quietly. No scenes. No lectures. I opened a private checking account under my name only. Moved the majority of my income there. I left the basics running, rent, electricity, insurance, because I'm not a child. But the discretionary spending, the monthly fun budget, that got cut. Then I called the bank and requested to remove her from the shared card. I replaced it with a reloadable card with a small, fixed amount. No warning. No confrontation. Just a shift, the same way she shifted her affection. 3 days later, she noticed. She was trying to order a skincare bundle online. I was on the couch reading when she called from the kitchen. "Leo, did you cancel a card?" I looked up casually. "No, I changed it." "What does that mean?" "It means the rules have changed." She blinked, tilted her head. "What rules?" I set my book down, leaned forward calmly. "If connection in our relationship is going to happen only when you want it, then so will everything else." She narrowed her eyes. "Are you punishing me?" I shook my head. "No, I'm mirroring you." See, Bianca wasn't used to me setting boundaries. She was used to unlimited grace. I'd always been the one to apologize first, to keep the peace, to let things slide. But this time, I wasn't trying to win her over. I was trying to win myself back. She tried to laugh it off at first. "You're serious? You're putting me on an allowance like a teenager?" I didn't flinch. "No, I'm setting limits in the same way you did. When you told me intimacy was on your terms, you created a new standard. I'm just applying it to everything." She scoffed and walked off. But over the next week, she started to feel the difference. The online orders stopped arriving. Her favorite hair salon called about her canceled appointment. Even her gym emailed a failed payment notification. The silence in the house grew heavier. She wasn't used to not getting what she wanted when she wanted. And what surprised me was how fast her composure started to crack. Not because she missed me, but because she missed the benefits. One night, she sat across from me at dinner, a meal I cooked, and said, "You're really going to keep doing this?" I looked up from my plate. "Doing what?" "This little lesson. Freezing the account. Making me feel small." I set my fork down. "Bianca, I never made you feel small. But I won't keep making myself feel invisible while funding your lifestyle." She went quiet. And for once, she didn't have a snarky comeback. It hit her. This wasn't a tantrum. It was a boundary. And that's when she tried a new tactic, kindness. Or what looked like it. She started sitting closer on the couch. Asked about my day. Made small talk. Even leaned in for a kiss one morning before I left for work. Something she hadn't done in nearly 6 months. But I could feel it wasn't genuine. It was strategic. She was trying to play nice, so she could go back to spending freely. I kept calm. Didn't reject her, but didn't chase it either. She tried being intimate a few days later. I said I wasn't in the mood. She froze. "You're turning me down?" I nodded. "I guess I'm not feeling it." "Sound familiar?" Her face turned red. Not because of rejection, but because she realized I was serious. The energy had shifted. I wasn't angry. I wasn't yelling. I was just unplugged. And when a man emotionally checks out, it shows. She started pacing around the house more. Cooking, cleaning, offering to go grocery shopping. Things she hadn't done in months. But it was too late. Because once you've pushed someone away for so long, their return isn't always available, no matter how hard you knock. And that's the part she didn't understand. She thought withholding affection was a power move. She didn't realize I had the power to walk away completely. And I already had one foot out the door. She thought it was just about the money, but what she never realized is that I had already stopped loving her. You know what's crazy? For a long time, I thought the worst kind of pain came from betrayal, the kind you read about in those messy stories where someone cheats or disappears. But I've come to learn that there's a pain much quieter than that. The kind where someone stays in your life, but slowly stops seeing you, stops choosing you. That was Jessica. I wasn't her punching bag. I wasn't being cheated on. She didn't leave. But every day, she stopped loving me, a little at a time. And I felt it. Not all at once. It came in waves. The eye rolls when I try to talk about my day, the avoidance when I reach for her, the subtle rejection wrapped in sarcasm. She had this way of making me feel like I was asking for too much when all I wanted was connection. Affection? Only when she wanted. Conversations? If it wasn't about her, she'd zone out. Gratitude? Forget it. I could spend the whole day fixing things around the house or booking her salon appointments and get nothing more than a flat. Okay. And yet, the spending never stopped. New outfits, brunches with her friends, home decor she'd throw away after 2 weeks. Nails done every 10 days. I was funding her lifestyle while getting treated like a stranger sleeping on the other side of the bed. So yeah, I froze the account. But here's what she never understood. It was never just about the money. It was about the emotional bill I'd been footing for years, the one she never paid a cent toward. After I cut off her access to the non-essentials, I expected anger. Maybe a confrontation. But that didn't come right away. She acted surprised at first. Confused, then annoyed, then suspicious. "Are you trying to control me?" she asked one afternoon, arms folded, tone already rising. I shook my head. "No, I'm trying to stop enabling you." That didn't go over well. The next few days were quiet. Too quiet. She started slamming cabinets, walking around the apartment like she was hunting for a fight. But I didn't give her one. I stayed calm, steady, still cooked, still cleaned up after myself. Still kept the basics paid for. But emotionally, I was done investing. And that's when it hit her. The shift wasn't about power. It was about me stepping back from a version of myself I no longer recognized. She started trying again. At least, that's what it looked like. Little gestures. Sitting closer on the couch. Laughing at my jokes. Asking how my meetings went. She even made dinner one night. Something I hadn't seen her do in almost a year. But it didn't feel sincere. It felt like strategy, like she was trying to re-qualify for the perks of a relationship she'd abandoned long ago. I remember standing in the kitchen, watching her stir pasta while humming to herself, and I realized I didn't feel anything. Not anger, not relief, not love, just emptiness. And I think that scared me more than anything she'd ever said. Because when a man no longer feels disappointment, it's because he no longer has expectations. And that's where I was. A few days later, she brought up the money. "Are you going to turn the car back on?" she asked, gently, while placing her wine glass on the table like it was a peace offering. I looked at her, long and slow. "Why would I?" She blinked. "Because this isn't sustainable. I can't keep asking for everything." I nodded. "Exactly." Her brows furrowed. "I don't understand. You shouldn't have to ask, Jessica. Just like I shouldn't have had to beg for your attention." We stopped being a couple the moment this became transactional. She opened her mouth to reply, but had no words. And in that silence, I finally felt heard. Not because she agreed, but because she couldn't deny it anymore. That same night, I took a walk through our neighborhood. The streets were quiet. The air smelled like jasmine from someone's garden. And I realized how long it had been since I took time just to breathe, to reflect, to feel. I wasn't just letting go of Jessica. I was letting go of the version of myself that had clung to her approval for years. I started making small moves after that, looking at new places to live, separating personal belongings, preparing the emotional runway for a clean exit. Not because I wanted her to suffer, but because I didn't want to wake up 5 years from now, still stuck in a relationship that felt more like a subscription I couldn't cancel. She began to panic. I saw it in her eyes, in the way she started hovering more. Asking strange questions. "Do you still love me? Are you seeing someone? Are you planning something?" I never lied. I just smiled politely and said, "I'm planning peace." That's what I was chasing. Not revenge. Not chaos. Just peace. A month after the account freeze, I told her I was leaving. No big speech. No dramatic goodbye. Just honesty. This relationship has become one-sided. I've begged for love while you budgeted it out like some rare commodity. And now I'm done. She cried. Begged. said she could change, but I didn't respond with sarcasm or venom. I just said I already did, and I walked out. Now, I live in a smaller place. Nothing fancy, just clean walls, a good couch, quiet mornings, and no more emotional overdrafts. I make my own coffee, fold my own laundry, and smile, not because everything is perfect, but because I'm no longer settling for less than I give. Jessica still messages sometimes, sends photos from our trips, memories, little voice notes that say things like, "Remember this day," or "I miss you." But I don't reply, because she doesn't miss me. She misses who I was when I still needed her approval. And now I know better. I don't chase people who make love conditional. I don't fund lifestyles built on emotional absence. And most of all, I don't stay where I'm tolerated just because I once hoped for change. In the end, she thought she was teaching me patience. But I was teaching her what absence sounds like when a man who gave everything finally walks away. And that silence? That's the sound of her learning what enough really looks like once it's gone.